I'm super excited to be one of your moderators tonight as we get to know all the candidates. Thank you for having me.
Hi everybody, I am Vanessa. I am a senior at Culver City High School and the policy and advocacy team lead for Vote 16 Culver City. I will also be asking you all questions tonight. I hope everybody is having a good evening. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Ava Franz. I'm a junior at Culver City High School. I will be the timekeeper tonight. And I'm also a member of Vote 16 Culver City, and I do the communications. Okay, the format for this evening, we will start with opening introductions. They will, each person will have 2 minutes each in the same order in which you'll be introduced. Next, we will have questions that we will randomize, and there'll be 1 minute each. Then individual questions posed to you, which will be 1 minute each, and we will randomize the order yet again. Then we will have a lightning round and a thumbs up and down round in which the order will be randomized. Some more questions where you will have 1 minute each and it will be randomized. And lastly, a response section where you have 2 minutes to respond to any points raised by any other candidates. And lastly, closing statements, which will be 2 minutes each and once again randomized. So the participants tonight, we have Jan Perry, Baltazar Fedelizo, Michael Schur, Sydney Kumliger, and Dr. Daniel Lee. So we will first start with our opening statements. So using this random order, we will now begin with candidate introductions. As a reminder, you'll have 2 minutes to introduce yourselves, and your time will start once you give your name. Feel free to include your pronouns if you would like to as well. So first we will start with Ms. Jan Perry.
Hi, everybody. I'm really happy to be here tonight, and I'm excited about hearing your questions. My name is Jan Perry, and I am the mother of a rescue dog and a millennial. And I am very attuned to the issues that young people are facing because I spend a lot of time listening to my daughter and her friends and the struggles that they go through to get jobs, to be able to live independent lives, and their fears and concerns and vulnerabilities about the future going forward. What I want for you as your next Congresswoman is clean air, clean water, an end to hydraulic fracking in our community, less traffic, relief from student debt, and a better future. I think when I was preparing something to write about my own mother who's passed away for Mother's Day, and what she wanted for me and for my sisters was a better life than they had. And I want that for you too. I want you to have a better life, a better opportunity with security, no fear of world war and worldwide conflict, and opportunities to live out your passions and to be able to make a living from them so that you can lead complete, fulfilled lives. And I want to be your helpmate, your partner, and I want to hear what you have to say. So my name is Jan Perry, 37th Congressional District. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Next, we will have Mr. Baltazar Fedelizo.
Yes, hello. My name is Baltazar Fedelizo, baltazar4congress.com. I'm running on 3 issues. Supply chain, I was a supply corps officer for the U.S. Navy, recruited to that for that specific purpose. Energy, I manufactured biodiesel. I was a Latin Business Leader of the Year award in 2010 for manufacturing it. And homelessness. I was homeless for 48 months. I have a homeless management information systems number. I was a project manager professional and a Six Sigma black belt. I was able to get myself out of homelessness into stability and have my own place. So I can pass that on to other people, which I have. I think that I congratulate all 3 of you panelists that are still in high school. I wasn't politically active at all until this year because of the issues that are going on. And they're easy fixes in my mind. As a supply corps officer, I was in charge of supplies anywhere in the world. I'd have to push it anywhere in the world, no excuses at all. As far as biodiesel is concerned, I took the lessons learned from 2006, 1980, when they were having odd even days, and 1974, when my father used to complain about gas prices at that time. And homelessness, of course, is affecting everyone. And it's uncomfortable to see when my customer who's the LA Football Club, and I walk 20 yards away to the Chevron station on King and Figueroa, and they're just encamped there. And I think that that's a travesty in and of itself, because no one deserves to live like that in a first world nation such as us. And I'll be sure to clean that up as soon as I get elected, with your help, of course.
Thank you. Next, we'll have Mr. Michael Schur.
How are you? I'm Michael Schur. I am running for Congress here in the 37th, and I have been, until about 2 months ago, a journalist, a reporter, and I have a little bit of familiarity with KidScoop because as a journalist who was traveling the country and going to events, I would see Michelle with little kids dressed up in suits and ties who got to ask questions of the candidates from Iowa to New Hampshire and other places in between at debates. And I was always so envious of those kids who got to ask the questions that we wanted to ask. So it's a terrific thing you're doing. And as I guess now a former journalist, I appreciate being among young journalists as we have here on our panel tonight. So thanks for doing that. I got into this race after having been a reporter, having been around the country, close to all the problems in this country. I am of the belief that January 6th is the tip of the iceberg, that we are in a crisis of democracy right now, and that there are little January 6ths happening in the over 40 states that I've been to in the past 5 years, covering a pandemic, covering 2 elections. It is absolutely an emergent time, and it is something that propelled me to leave my job and get into this race. I live in the 37th district. I care deeply about Los Angeles and the people here, and as some of my other candidates in this race have just said, from Jan and Balthazar, the issues that are in this community right now are everywhere, but they are acute here, from homelessness to the cost of living crisis that we are having. And, of course, the environment constantly should be at the forefront of what we talk about. So I appreciate the opportunity to be with all of you, and thanks.
Thank you. Next, we will have Senator Cindy Kamlager.
Thank you. And I just want to let folks know that I'm not going to be able to stay the entire time because of scheduling conflict. This is the first time that will have happened. But I am Cindy Kamlager. I am the senator for the Senate, the 30th Senate District, and a candidate for the 37th congressional seat. I am running on a platform that is about saving our climate, saving our economy, and saving our democracy. And as a result of what we just saw happen with SCOTUS and Roe v. Wade, all of those issues are incredibly important. I have been in this district for a really long time, working in the nonprofit world, finding my way to helping parents and providers fight to make sure that childcare resources were protected, finding my way to help Holly J. Mitchell run for the Assembly and the Senate and serving as her district director, really coming to understand the needs and the interests of this constituency, running and serving for the Los Angeles Community College Board, where it was all about fighting for our DACA students, for our foster students, making sure that we would have diversity in our teaching and administrative workforce, also fighting to make sure that young people interested in vocational training could learn while they earn, working as an assembly person and now currently as a senator, fighting on the issues of healthcare for all, economic justice, women's rights, immigrant issues, voting protection, economic justice, housing, fighting against homelessness, and my passion through and through criminal legal reform. I am excited about being here with you and listening to the issues that you all care about. I have to tell you that I've been a mother, watched my young folks go through the past in school, virtual, and so I now have a deep appreciation for the mental and behavioral health issues that so many of us are facing, but also the issues around affordability and access and identity that so many of our young folks are grappling with and asking us to step into the center with them. Ultimately, my campaign is about bringing folks from the margins to the center. And once again, we can see as a result of SCOTUS that there is so much work for all of us.
Thank you so much. Next, we will have the individual questions section where we will pose.
Daniel didn't go. Daniel didn't go.
So sorry. Next, we will have Mayor Dr. Daniel Lee.
Thank you, and thank you for having me here. It's been a fairly dark week, and I just want to take a moment to acknowledge that the league from the Supreme Court, it really was sort of to be expected if you've been watching the Supreme Court and the moves of people on the political right for quite some time. We knew this was coming at some point. We just didn't know it would be this week. In that context, I just want to reiterate my focus for the campaign in the 37th district. My number one priority is still the climate crisis, because I feel like if we don't address that, everything else will be harder to address in the long run. But as I've stated since the start of this campaign last fall, my other priority is really codifying a woman or a person's right to choose, because I don't believe that it's just about medicine or abortion or not abortion. I think it's really fundamentally about equality and equity, and whether we believe that women have the power and ability and the right to make their own decisions about their body. And I think it's a sad week for equality, but it shows us the work that we need to do, and it shows us what our focus needs to be moving forward. Of course, I'm very much in favor of comprehensive immigration reform, or as I would like to say, ending our racist immigration system, providing single-payer healthcare for everyone in the country, as many other nations have done for a very long time. Of course, protecting the right to vote and strengthening the right to vote. And of course, building enough housing so that we don't have the type of homelessness crisis that we have, not just here in Los Angeles, LA County, Culver City, or California. I've had the opportunity to travel to DC and Chicago, and it's very bad there too. We need government to to step into the role that I think it should, and that will be providing for those who have the least. And that's what I would push as your Congress member for the 37th district.
Great, thank you. Next, we move on to individual questions where you will have 2 minutes each. We have a new order this time. First, we'll have Senator Kamlager. Second, Mayor Dr. Daniel Lee. Third, Mr. Fedelizo. Fourth, Mr. Schur. And fifth, Ms. Perry.
I would also like to clarify, respondents will have 1 minute to respond to each of these questions. That's our mistake. Okay, so first, Senator Kamlager. Senator Kamlager, you indicated that you would work across the aisle in the Culver City Democratic Club survey. Can you name any Republicans currently in the House you would like to venture forth in bipartisan work with, and what issues would you seek to challenge on your first day in Congress?
Which issues would I seek to challenge?
Yes.
So I chair the Los Angeles County delegation here, which is bicameral and bipartisan. And so sometimes there are opportunities to work across the aisle, and oftentimes there are not. I can't name any particular congressmen or even senators right now because I'm in a daze about what has happened and what we have to fight for. But I do know that Congresswoman Karen Bass worked in a bipartisan fashion around foster care. I do know that there are some Republicans that are interested in criminal legal reform. I do know that we have an opportunity to work across party lines when it comes to climate change. And some of those things might be more than aspirational. I think right now my biggest focus will be making sure that I can take the playbook that we have in here and California, we're members of Congress, advise their states to do so too. That focus that we are protecting a pregnant person's right to choose. And so one of my priorities will be to make sure that that is something that other folks
Thank you, Senator Kamlager.
do as well.
Thank you. Next, we have a question for Mayor Dr. Daniel Lee. Mayor Lee, you have strong, or some would say polarizing leftist beliefs. Will you be able to make compromises and be effective in Congress? How do you plan to do this?
So one, I think if people actually listen to what I'm saying, I don't think my beliefs are polarizing at all. I think if they listen to what other people are saying, they can seem polarizing. I always like to walk people back to my experience in the United States Air Force and the Air National Guard. My politics were exactly the same while enlisted. Most of the people who I was enlisted with were Republicans. We got along great. We worked together. We had to work together. I was in a SATCOM crew. I am from the South, and I am used to speaking with people who have different opinions, especially around race and gender. And I have a track record of working across the aisle when it isn't like a federal context, but across the ideological aisle. So I think I'd be fine.
Excellent. Thank you, Mayor Lee. Next, we have a question for Mr. Baltazar Fedelizo. So recently, there's been a lot of debate amongst Republicans about who truly represents the party, the more right-wing Trump-style Republicans or more moderate Romney and Cheney types. Mr. Fedelizo, which sympathy would you define yourself as aligning with more in your personal and political priorities? And what direction do you believe your party is heading in the future?
Well, as far as where the party is going right now, I'm relatively new. Both my parents were Democrats. So at this point in time, I think it's really about principle over partisanship. Whoever I can work with to lower these gas prices down, whoever I can work with to for the supply chain when people in my district in the 37th run out of food at the Ralphs, they want answers right then and there. They don't want to know who's blocking what. It's just how we're going to get this done. Moreover than that, the homelessness needs to be resolved immediately because they're all over the place and they need help. I've been overseas and it looks like a bombed out territory. So as far as the leadership of the party, I don't know. It doesn't matter because my district comes first. Principle, again, I'll reiterate that again. Principle over partisanship. Moreover than that, if values are clear, decisions are easy. I work with whoever I need to work with to get the job done. I've been in business for 22 years, franchisee of the franchisee of the year, Nobel Peace Prize in 2017. I was an officer in the Army and the Navy, so I'll get it done.
Thank you, Mr. Fedelizo. Thank you.
Not a problem.
Next up, we have a question for Mr. Michael Schur. Mr. Schur, as a former journalist, do you understand the importance of freedom of speech and the public remaining informed? Do you feel there's a conflict between national security and the desire for free dissemination of accurate information? What will you do as a congressperson to support your beliefs?
Well, it's a great question. I think that when you are a journalist, you have different priorities than what you will have when I'm a congressman. So I think that, in fact, we need to hold people accountable. And so journalists who are looking into national security and the ones who do it responsibly are careful about what is confidential and what is the kind of information that you think it should be disseminated, especially when it comes to wiretapping, especially when it comes to actually going around the laws that are in place for surveillance and things like that in terms of efforts to for national security. What I think will happen when I am in Congress is I will have a respect for what journalists need, but also a responsibility to the national defense and whatever it is that I am charged with at that point. So I think it gives me the perspective that is pretty rare as well.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Schur. And finally, an individual question for Ms. Jan Perry. Ms. Perry, you've experienced and success as a public servant on the LA City Council, and I must mention your work with housing. In Congress, how do you plan to work with newer politicians and blend your perspective with those with less experience?
Well, I was mentored by people who had an enormous amount of experience, and one of my greatest mentors went on to be the Undersecretary at Housing and Urban Development in the Obama administration under Sean Donovan, and she was a general manager and deputy mayor in the city of Los Angeles, and her name is Mercedes Marquez. But I also had a chief of staff who was a public health nurse, so we saw the need for housing as a public health issue and a public health crisis. Not only affordable housing, but permanent supportive housing. These are the types of people who taught me, and I listened and learned very carefully, spent a lot of time with housing providers for people who dealt with people who were severely mentally ill, people who were violent, people in recovery, people coming through reentry. Those are the kinds of issues that I want to take to scale across the country. Did I hit my time? 4
yes.
seconds? Thank you, I'll stop now. Okay, I'm just trying to be respectful of the time.
Thank you, Ms. Ferry. Next up, Ada.
Hello. Now that we're moving past the individual questions, I have a question for everyone. And that's on March 3rd of 2020, California held its presidential primaries. So we're wondering, who did you vote for in this election? Starting with Senator Kamlager. Looks like she might be frozen. We'll come back to Senator Kamlager. Mayor Lee.
I voted for Senator Bernie Sanders.
Mr. Fedelizo.
I voted for Donald Trump.
Mr. Schur.
Well, I was a journalist. This is an interesting time for me because I wasn't supposed to say who I voted for, so now I'm on the other side. I did vote for Joe Biden.
Ms. Perry?
Joe Biden.
Joe Biden. And it looks like Senator Kamlager is no longer on the call. So, thank you. Over to Vanessa.
Okay, then we will move on to our next question then. I hope Senator Kamlager will be able to rejoin the call, but if not, everybody wish her a good evening. Yes. All right, so our next question is about, well, we actually have a new order for this section. Ava, if you would like to.
Yes. The next order this is the state and federal issue questions. Mm-hmm. Okay, the new order is Mr. Schur. Second will be Senator Kamlager, but since she is not here, we will move on to Ms. Perry, then Mayor Lee, and lastly, Mr. Fedelizo.
Excellent. Thank you, Ava. So our first question is about current events. The Supreme Court draft decision that would overturn Roe v. Wade was recently leaked following a wave of state legislation, which many advocates see as enforcing an undue burden to access abortion. How do you feel about the issue of abortion rights, and what will you do to protect reproductive rights?
This is exactly what my campaign is based on. Not simply this issue, but I talked about a democracy under attack. It's about the rolling back of our rights that's happening in small ways all over the country. And nowhere was it seen more clearly than it was earlier this week when that leak from the Supreme Court came out, and Justice Alito's horrendous decision, draft decision there. So the first thing I would do is work to codify Roe v. Wade as established law. I will work when I'm in Congress to make sure that my voice is heard on expanding the court. I think it is a nationally popular issue right now because of the rights that are coming, they are coming for on the other side. But also, I think that the thing you need to do is you need to understand that women's rights are all of our rights, and the sovereignty of a woman's body, her own agency over her own body, is something the government has absolutely nothing to do with. As a congressman, I will make sure that I hold to that throughout and make sure that we have laws that protect women.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Schur. Next, Ms. Perry, same question.
Thank you. Let me start out with a quick story. I didn't grow up in California. I grew up in Ohio. And when I was in high school, abortion was illegal in the state of Ohio. And if you know your geography, you know that it's not that far to drive across the border into Canada. I had a friend who got pregnant in high school and had to drive to Canada with a few of us to get an abortion because she didn't want her parents to know. She lived in an abusive household, and it was terrible. So we all got in the car and went across the border, and it was a terrifying trip because she started to bleed on the way back. The reason I tell you this story is she was an African-American young woman, but when other young ladies got pregnant in high school, if they had money, they went to New York to get a medical procedure, and it wasn't risky and it wasn't dangerous. This decision has taken us back to that time. I will work to codify Roe versus Wade because that's a social justice issue.
Excellent. Thank you, Ms. Perry. Next, Mayor Dr. Daniel Lee, same question.
Yeah, and I'll just share a very quick story. I was born in Alabama, but grew up in Pensacola, Florida. And when I was in middle school and high school, there are a few unfortunate incidences of abortion doctors being shot and killed in my city. At the time, you know, there were discussions both in school and church and otherwise around abortion being a religious versus a non-religious issue. Is this, you know, killing the baby? Is this snuffing out life? if you look at the history, a lot of the very strong religious figures in the mid-50s and the late 40s were in favor of abortion because they wanted families to be happy and healthy. I think it's fundamentally an issue of misogyny. And as I mentioned, an issue of equality. A woman has the right to make the decisions about her own body, period.
Thank you, Dr. Lee. Next, Mr. Fedelizo, same question.
I think you compounded the question. Number one was the integrity of the process of how this leak was made. I hope they get to the end of it, because this can leak into other and spread out to other cases. Number two, as far as I believe I'm personally against abortion, but pro-choice, whatever the law and the books are, they are. I don't think one congressman will make a difference, because he needs a cohort of people to agree with him. But again, that's where I stand. I'm personally against abortion, but whatever's on the books is on the books, and I have to ride with whatever the Supreme Court says. So that's where I stand on that.
Okay.
But I think the most important thing is the process of how it got leaked.
Thank you, Mr. Fedelizo. Now we're moving into a question on environmental sustainability. So how will you facilitate a national transition between fossil fuel usage and renewable energy with regards to jobs, infrastructure, and environmental protections? Is this a priority for you? Starting with Mr. Schur.
Well, it absolutely is a priority. I was fortunate enough to work, I heard Jan talking about her mentors. I had, for a moment, a mentor in my life was the former Vice President Al Gore, who owned Current TV, which is where I was an anchor and reporter for a while. And I got through osmosis a lot of what the Vice President had to say about the environment and how important an issue was. And I don't think I have a lot of disagreement on this panel, but the urgency of our climate crisis right now is what is most important. It also can be a job creator. People talk so much about how fossil fuel is such a big employer that it takes up so much of our business space. But the transition that you just talked about is the most important part of it. The transition will create jobs. And I would even say that if we had rooftop solar mandated throughout and subsidized throughout the 37th district, we would be creating jobs here in the 37th district, and we could also create manufacturing here. It's not that that's the only opportunity. And of course, I'm running for the 37th district, so I will talk about the 37th district, but it is a national issue that can create jobs. It is also a mandate. The earth is mandating that we do something about it. And as a member of Congress, I will certainly do that.
Thank you, Mr. Schur.
Now, Ms. Perry.
Thanks a lot. When I said in the beginning that I wanted for you a better life and a better quality of air and water and a resolution to our climate disaster, climate crisis, I meant what I said. The Green New Deal provides a really excellent framework upon which to build. I've learned a lot in the last couple of years. I've been working on a project in Long Beach that is a goods movement project with renewable energy, and it will bring new jobs, get trucks off the 710 freeway, and create a whole different system for moving goods across the southern part of our county. It'll do it in a cleaner way and a healthier way. It's important to build infrastructure to accommodate that, but what is also important is to upskill or uptrain or teach people these newer technologies so they will not fear the Green New Deal, but they will embrace it because they know that they will not be displaced, and that it's ultimately to all of our benefit to move forward with a better quality of life and better technology that will improve the quality of our health.
Thank you. Now, Mayor Lee.
Thank you. Part of the entire reason I'm running at all, the reason climate and the climate crisis is number one, is because we're not doing enough. We've had some wins on the local level, on the state level here in California, but on the federal level, we're lagging behind. The Green New Deal should be the floor of what we do. We need to get rid of fossil fuel subsidies on the domestic level. We got rid of a few in the context of some of this legislation that came around as a result of the pandemic, but there's much more we can do in terms of the just transition. As Mr. Schur said, a lot of people talk about the number of fossil fuel jobs, but more people are employed in clean energy jobs in California right now. The problem is they're not union jobs with good benefits. That's where the federal government can come in. That's where the federal government can do something like the Works Progress Administration, like some of the things that Sunrise Movement has been pushing to bring jobs that are clean, but also pay people well.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Fedelizo.
Well, I'm a conservationist, most of all. You know, I believe in the environment. I was in the alternative fuel industry for 13 years, and I think it's a can-do. However, I remember Bush saying that after 9/11 that he was going to send a bunch of people to training. I was part of that cohort because I was a systems engineer at the time, and you get stuck in training. And whatever you're being trained for, you have to hope for you're going to get picked up for it. Now, if you don't get picked up, you just wasted X amount of time and money going to something that doesn't really pan out for you. I would be really suspect on what the critical path is, what milestones to meet in order to make the transition. So you, as a up and coming person, won't be inconvenienced by the lack of judgment and foresight. And we've seen many of these solar projects across the state fail or intermittent, and they overpromise and underdeliver many times. I mean, that's what my concern is, because I was one of those 9/11 refugees that, you know, I'm going to training.
Thank you. Now back to Vanessa.
All right, everyone, thank you for those answers. So our next question is actually relating to Vote 16. We are going to go in the same order as we went for the last question. So do you support Vote 16 and other movements that aim to lower the voting age at city, state, or national levels from 18? Starting with Michael Schur.
Yeah, I do. I think that if college, I mean, if high school students are going to be part of adulthood and part of that next cohort, that I think it's important that they have a voice, that you be able to talk about things having to do with education, and have high school students who are 16 and above be able to contribute their 2 cents on it. So absolutely, I'm for expanding the vote. Also, getting younger people to vote is just important in general. So I think anything that starts it and gets interest, I'm for it.
Great, thank you, Mr. Schur. And next on to Ms. Perry.
Okay, thanks very much. You know, at 16, you can do a lot of things. Well, not everything, but you can do quite a few things. And I think starting people at a younger age to be civically engaged is a very good thing. And I would also involve our school system so that we can make sure that every single school, particularly every single public school, has the same curriculum to prepare people starting at age, say, 14, 15. So by the time they're ready to vote, they understand the civic process and American history and that sort of thing. And that the education be equal across the board, across the city, across the county, so that we can ensure that everyone has been exposed to the same information. So when it's go time, everybody has the same ability to understand, discern the issues, and participate in the process.
Great, thank you, Ms. Perry. Next, we have Mayor Dr. Lee.
So I've definitely been convinced over the last few years by various representatives of Vote 16, even though I was already in favor. I feel as if, based on the data that you provided, when people start to vote young, they continue to vote throughout their lives. And I think that's a good thing. The bigger thing in my brain in the context of our federal representation is that I think we need more stratified representation when it comes to age. A lot of our representatives are in their 60s or 70s, a very large amount. Some are in their 50s, and it's less likely to see people in their 40s or 30s or even 20s. I think if we had more stratified representation when it comes to age, we would actually be tackling some of the issues that actually affect people who are in their teens, their 20s, and their 30s, such as student loan forgiveness and or free public education. And I think Vote 16 is one of the ways that we get there.
Excellent. Thank you, Dr. Lee. Next, Mr. Fedelizo.
Well, I think that voting 16, I remember when I was 16 and I don't know, you couldn't get me to buy in. I took civics class, I took history, but their interest wasn't there. Now, as far as you guys on the panel, if they were as informed of you, yes, I would agree. But at 16, you know, I just can't see for the masses of youngsters getting involved to vote. My strategy would be, like Ms. Perry said, be sure they're educated in the process, just like you take your GEs in junior college. Have you taken X number of classes? But no, overall, no, because based on what I've seen thus far in my youth and the people I was hanging around with, I played at San Pedro High School football, and I got transferred over to Carson High School. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know enough because all my evidence is anecdotal. So I'd have to read the data on that.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Fedelizo. Back to Ada.
Hi, everybody. So now we're going to be jumping into a lightning round where each participant will have 20 seconds to answer a question, and this comes with a new order. So starting with Mr. Fedelizo, followed by Mayor Lee, then Mr. Schur, and finally Ms. Perry. I'd like to invite Kyla to ask a question now.
Hi, what book are you currently reading, and what is your favorite? Thank you.
What is my what again?
What is your favorite book?
What was my favorite book? Oh, my favorite book is, I have two actually. I have Sun Tzu, The Art of War, and Quantum Leap Advantage by Dan Pena. It's more of a business book. And what was your other question?
And what book are you currently reading?
I'm rereading Quantum Leap Advantage. You have to read books several times in order to get a good essence of what they're trying to say.
Thank you.
No problem.
Mayor Lee.
Currently reading is not actually accurate. I haven't had time, but currently reading Parable of the Sower by Octavia Butler. I read Kindred last year. Want to knock these two out. But my favorite book, it's more like 10 that are all tied, but I usually tell people Jitterbug Perfume by Tom Robbins.
Mr. Schur.
Yeah, like Mayor Lee, I don't really have a ton of time to read now. So it's ironic that the book I'm reading is called The Unfinished Presidency, because I think it's going to be the unfinished book for at least for a little while. But it's about Jimmy Carter's presidency. And the other, I mean, you know, and again, I mean, not to copy Mayor Lee, but truthfully, it could be any book at any time, and probably there's a 10-way tie. I always go back, I think, to Kill a Mockingbird, because it was the book that meant the most to me when I first read it. But if you ask me tomorrow, I'll probably have a different answer.
And Ms. Perry.
Okay, I got 20 seconds. Favorite book, Team of Rivals, about Abraham Lincoln, and Let There Be Water. And that's by Seth Siegel. But my all-time favorite book, and I have it since the 4th grade, is Harriet the Spy by Louise Fitzhugh. And my copy is so old that I have it in a sandwich bag because it's just rotting, but I love it. And I love reading about it. And I like the way she went around spying on people. I thought it was hilarious. And as an adult, I find it even funnier.
Thank you. Now a question from Kenny.
No, I think Kyla goes again, no?
Oh, I was going to go back to Kyla.
Oh, okay, fine.
When you win, which band would you like to play at your victory party?
What band would I like to play at my victory party? Ice Cube. Because I grew up on rap, and he's from South Central, so Ice Cube.
Mayor Lee.
I don't think the bands I would like to play would actually play. I think they'd say no. But my friend Aloe Black went to undergrad with me, and he's played at the White House a couple times, so I probably ask him to play.
Mr. Schur.
My campaign team said, do not say anything about how much you like Genesis when you're in a debate. So I won't say it, but I'll wink and say Genesis. I'll probably say the Dave Matthews Band because I went to the University of Virginia and they are from that area.
And Ms. Perry.
I would invite Beyonce and Pharrell.
And one more question from Kyla.
Thank you, Thank you. You could have dinner with a living world leader. What would it be? Who would it be?
Probably Barack Obama.
Mayor Lee.
For me, it would probably be Jacinda Ardern from New Zealand. She's been great as a policymaker, but also just as a leader in the context of crisis and trying to really account for the needs of everyone in our country. Love to pick her brain.
Mr. Scher.
I think that it would be Vladimir Zelensky right now. I think being close to somebody who is going through the struggles through which he is leading Ukraine would be about as fascinating a dinner as I could have right now.
And Ms. Perry.
I have to agree with Michael Scher. I would like to have dinner with President and First Lady Zelensky and possibly the children, because I've never seen a war fought this way. I remember the night that it started, when there was a cyber attack, and I told my daughter in about 2 hours, there's going to be the beginning of the war. And exactly that's what happened. But to see Zelensky communicate on a global basis using a virtual digital technology to get his message out and to be with the people, of the people, and still be presidential, and to communicate that need for aid, for support, for democracy. It's an incredible lesson to bear witness to. And I think that it would be a once in a lifetime opportunity.
Thank you so much to Kyla and Kenny for asking these questions. Now,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now I have some lightning round questions of my own, just to keep these real quick. Who is one person in Congress you feel most aligned to? Starting
Steve Scalise. He's my fraternity brother.
Now,
it's your fraternity.
Mayor Lee.
Ilhan Omar.
Mr. Scher.
Congressman Steve Cohen of Tennessee.
And Ms. Perry.
I like Maxine Waters.
Thank you. Next question. Some people use political labels to describe themselves, whether it be liberal, progressive, conservative, or anything else. What labels do you give to yourself?
Get it done.
Get it done. Mayor Lee?
I usually don't like to label myself, but if I'm pushed, I just remind people that I'm a social worker and a community organizer. And if I'm really pushed, I know this is too much time, I would say radical.
Mr. Scher?
I would say reasonable. That would be it's more of an adjective. It's not a political party. I'm a progressive, but I'm also I am also reasonable.
And Ms. Perry?
Progressive, pragmatic, problem solver, Democrat.
Next question. Who are you endorsing or voting for mayor of LA?
You know, I have not yet done the due diligence on either of the candidates. I've been focused on my own campaign. So at this point in time, I'll abstain until I figure when things start to shake itself out, I'll make a decision.
Mayor Lee?
So I haven't made my decision about who I'm going to endorse. I was an early supporter of Karen Bass. Some of the things that she said about policing and homelessness have rubbed me the wrong way when it comes to policy. I like Gina Viola as well. So it would be Karen Bass most likely, but possibly Gina Viola.
Mr. Scher?
Yeah, I haven't decided either. I have great respect for Karen Bass. I've covered her. She's been my member of Congress for quite a long time. I've covered her in Washington. I've covered her locally as a reporter. I haven't made my mind up, but I'd have to be convinced not to vote for Karen Bass.
Thank you. Ms. Perry?
I live in the unincorporated area of Los Angeles County. I live in Ladera, so I can't vote in the mayor's race, but I'm keeping a very, very close eye on Karen Bass and Kevin De Leon.
Thank you. And one last lightning round question. Karen Bass held in-person town halls multiple times a year here in District 37. Can you commit to doing the same?
I'll do that and more.
Mayor Lee?
Given the resources, I'll get it. Everyone will know me.
And yes, definitely multiple town halls. And then there are quite a few other ideas for more direct democracy that I have as well.
Mr. Scher?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, part of what I want to do, part of my background that I want to employ in being in Congress is to actually report what's going on in Washington to the people of the 37th district and vice versa, listen to them. My job was about listening and then going back to Washington and telling them what the people here are saying. I can't wait to do that.
Ms. Perry?
Yeah, I was a journalism major undergrad, and while I was never actually a practicing journalist, I do like to listen to people's stories and then translate them into action and problem solving. And so, yes, I would commit to town halls, and that's an easy commitment to make. But I want to go beyond that. I want to meet people where they are in their houses of worship, in their schools, in their classes, go to independent living, go to people are gathering, and just get some time and talk, and also do it virtually and continue that. I mean, Zoom has opened the world up.
Okay, back to Vanessa.
Thank you. I saw on your website that you are a Trojan. Fight on. Fight on.
Forever and always.
Yes, so we are going to be entering our thumbs up, thumbs down round of questions. We'll be going in the same order. So basically, you guys can respond to these questions solely with a thumbs up response or a thumbs down response, and I'll make sure to clarify what either of those responses means with regards to the question. Actually, sorry, there is no order for this one. You guys can all do it at the same time, and we'll give everybody a second to take in your lovely and amazing responses. All right, so first question, should Congress members be allowed to participate in stock trading? Thumbs up for yes, thumbs down for no.
Wait, okay.
Yep.
No. Sorry, no. Can I just say no?
Okay, thank you. Next question, Culver City is a sanctuary city. Do you support abolishing ICE? Thumbs up for yes, thumbs down for no.
What do you mean, getting rid of ICE altogether?
Sorry, yes, abolishing ICE. Thumbs up for yes, abolishing ICE. Thumbs down for no. I do not support abolishing ICE.
In the
yes.
city of Culver City.
I mean, in general,
Well,
it's a federal organization. Culver City just happens to be a sanctuary city, and that's where we're based right now.
Okay.
Sorry, that's the only reason that's part of the question. Forget the Culver City part. Do you support abolishing ICE? Thumbs up for yes, thumbs down for no.
No.
Okay, I say no. I say revamp it, not get rid of it.
Exactly, I concur.
Okay,
It's scaring me that I'm agreeing with Baltazar. That's very
you're
frightening.
a good lady, Miss Perry.
That's very terrifying to me.
Okay, great. Next question.
See, we can work together already. See?
Okay.
Together we can be what we can't be alone.
Okay.
I see. Yes. Next question. So even though the mask mandate has been lifted in California, many people are still wearing masks. Are you still wearing one? Thumbs up for yes, I'm still wearing a mask. Thumbs down for no, I'm not still wearing a mask.
No, I'm not wearing a mask.
Yes.
Occasionally, but like that.
Thumbs up or thumbs down, Mr. Scher?
I'm wearing a mask occasionally.
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay, so next question. Do you support capital punishment? Thumbs up for yes, I support capital punishment. Thumbs down for no, I'm anti-capital punishment.
No. Oops. No. Sorry.
No.
Stare decisis, whatever the law states, because it goes to each and every state.
No.
Every state is different.
Do you personally support capital punishment? Thumbs up for yes or thumbs down for no?
No.
Yes.
No.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay, so next question. Is socialism as an ideology good or bad? Thumbs up for yes, sorry. Thumbs up for yes, socialism is good. Thumbs down for no, socialism is bad.
Socialism is bad.
As an ideology?
As an ideology.
It's good.
Yeah.
As an ideology. Yes.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay, next question. And this is going to be the last of our thumbs up, thumbs down questions before we move on to the next round of questions. So do you support the right of trans youth to medically transition? Thumbs up for yes, thumbs down for no.
Youth, as define youth for me, under 18, over 18?
Yes, under 18.
No.
Thank you very much. Ada, back to you.
Now we have another round of 1-minute questions. This time we're talking about medical care, and the order will be Ms. Perry, followed by Mr. Schur, then Mayor Lee, and finally Mr. Fedelizo. The question is, drug prices are skyrocketing. What will you do to lower drug prices and take on private drug companies? Starting with Ms. Perry.
Well, I would look at Medicare for All and the coverage that it provides, and that it needs to be much more comprehensive. I need a greater depth of understanding of what drives these incredible pricing indexes, and to see what we can do to get the government to subsidize even more to drive the prices down, and then ask the drug companies to take much more responsibility for bringing life-saving medication to people who are in greatest need. I mean, I think about this case of the EpiPen, you know, and you remember when the price went up to sort of, I think it was like $500 a pen. You know, I have an old one that's about 10 years old that I've never gotten rid of, just because I know I can't personally afford to buy a new one. So, you know, we have to be realistic in bringing services to people. And if the government pushes the drug companies even harder with penalties, they need to do that.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Schur.
Yeah, I agree. Of course, I think we have to look at this as a national problem that is solvable. I think if you look at what the government can control, certainly the cost of prescription drugs is one of those problems. And by increasing subsidies, but also by attaching research dollars in exchange for that. So you're not going to get the research dollars that the government is giving out to so many of these drug companies unless they make their medicines more accessible and more affordable to those who are struggling. Just as Jan said, it's not just the EpiPen, it's people who have to take multiple drugs on a daily basis who cannot get good prices for those drugs. So I think that there are ways the government can work with these drug companies at the same time as continuing the research and seeing the progress that some of them are making.
Thank you. Mayor Lee?
So in the long term, we need single-payer healthcare. I usually say single-payer healthcare instead of Medicare for all, because there are a lot of things that Medicare leaves out, like vision, dental, and hearing. And there are a lot of gaps for people at certain income levels when it comes to Medicare. So we need single-payer healthcare for everyone that has no copays and that is free. In the short term, we need to look at legalizing and facilitating the import of drugs from places like Canada and Mexico. A lot of times we don't mention Mexico in that bargain because of racism and assumptions around the quality of medicine in Mexico, but we need to put Mexico in that too. In the long term, we need to get money out of politics because the pharmaceutical industry is one of the biggest contributors to federal elected representatives. And I agree with Mr. Schur. We need to make sure that if the government paid for this drug to be developed, it has to be at an affordable rate. No compromise, no negotiation.
Thank you. Mr. Fedelizo?
I second what Mr. Schur said, but moreover than that, I would RFP it out and make them competitive to sell us or to get access to the patients of the United States, and say to them, say, hey, look, you justify this price for me. If Canada and Mexico are a lot cheaper for the same drug, justify to me why you need a bigger cut of the pie.
Thank you. Back to Vanessa.
Great, thank you. We will move on to our next question in the same order. This is about international relations and the military. So should the United States be involved in the Russia-Ukraine conflict? How do you feel it is safe and responsible to handle countries like Russia and North Korea who present a significant nuclear threat, or Russia and China, who we are economically tied to? Starting with, I believe, Ms. Perry.
Okay. Yes, absolutely. The United States should be involved in this conflagration between Russia and Ukraine, because Ukraine is a democracy and we are their ally. And what I would do is, being mindful of our domestic agenda, of course, look at the technologies that are employed in other parts of the world, like the Iron Dome, to protect the Ukraine from the sky, from assault from the sky, from whomever aligns themselves with Russia, and then perhaps reallocate spending to help them fight a more effective ground war, because the world is going to be a better place when Putin isn't the strongest man or strongest person on the stage.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Ms. Perry. Next, Mr. Schur.
Yeah, so the way I look at it is that unquestionably the United States has to be involved in the way they're being involved. And I think that we have to do everything we can to prevent nuclear war. That's the bottom line. I think that President Biden has done a masterful job, and I know that's something that people don't say enough, but has done a masterful job in negotiating this war. And you know, what was very different about this is when Putin went into Ukraine, the world, Europe, everybody turned once again to the United States, which hadn't happened for several years. And Joe Biden answered. The Congress has been resolute, the administration has been resolute, and I think it's a very important part of what we are seeing in the way the global reaction to the United States has shifted in just a year and a half since Joe Biden took office.
Thank you, Mr. Schur. Next up, Mayor Lee.
So I feel like the president has done what he should do up to this point, though I really want to make a clear distinction. The U.S. is obviously already involved in this war. I think the distinction that I would make is that we should not have boots on the ground because that would accelerate the conflict. I think when you talk about the rest of your question, when you talk about Russia, South Korea, and China, we need to think of them all in their very specific context. China, I mean, I've had the opportunity to go to Beijing and Shanghai quite a few times in the last few years. China is not our enemy. Their military is not for our benefit. It's for the benefit of the people there. The real struggle overall is economic, and it's the same struggle or a similar struggle with different nuances in South Korea. South Korea leaders want to be seen as strong people while their people suffer. What we need to do is find ways to let them to be seen as strong while providing for their people with our aid, so we turn enemies into allies.
Excellent. Thank you, Mayor Lee. And lastly, Mr. Fedelizo.
Well, I agree with, I concur with Mr. Schur and Mr. Lee. However, we need to press for peace because we're dealing with nuclear weapons here. And if and when one goes off or assumes to go off, everyone's shooting everything everywhere and we're all dead. Moreover than that, Mayor Lee understands that Putin has been very strategic on what he did because he could have carpet bombed the whole country. And we would have a much worse issue than we already have now. I think that we've been involved there for a long time. I remember Crimea back under Trump or Barack Obama, that Russia had already making claims there in Crimea. No, there was no push for let's go to war then. Ukraine didn't say go to war then. My suspicion is why do it now? Key bono, who benefits off this overall? And all the money we're sending over there, is it being accounted for? I was part of the operation that sent a shipload of cash to Iraq, and once it got into port, disappeared. Excellent. So there's no accountability. So I want accountability. Report a survey.
Thank you, Mr. Fedelizo. Next, back to Ada.
I have a question for everyone on criminal justice and prison. And the question is that in the summer of 2020, there was a renewed public interest in the Black Lives Matter movement and the work of advocates in criminal justice, prison, and police reform. What do you feel is the role of the federal government in these issues, which some may argue are municipal or state issues? And same order, so that would be Ms. Perry.
The role of the federal government is to provide a national standard across the country so that people can have a reasonable expectation of how they'd be treated no matter what state they're in on things like no-knock search warrants, issues like stop and frisk, probable cause, when an officer should be able to pull a gun, programs to fight recidivism, early intervention. There was a form of criminal justice, for example, expanding Pell Grants to be able to cover people while they're incarcerated. So when they come out of incarceration, they have some sort of a certification so that they can start working and be more integrated into society. And then, of course, the work that I've been doing for the last 10 years with Black Women for Positive Change, which is the de-escalation of violence, not only between law enforcement, but within our own communities.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Scher.
I would say that Jan Perry won because she got to go first, and that was the complete answer. And the complete answer is we have to have standardized we have to have standardized procedures for policing, and that can come out of the Congress, that can come from Washington. De-escalation training is important, and I think that Washington can also talk with police departments and sheriff's associations around the country who all go to Washington, because I've been there when they come up there to lobby. And they can talk about some of the programs that are happening in cities like Seattle and Denver, where mental health experts are riding along with police officers to see to events that are non-violent and non-weapon calls. And they're seeing great results with that. They're de-escalating because of programs like that. So I think Congress can take a big role and should take a big role. I think this is one of the things that the House of Representatives owes the people of this country, who've been maligned by these sort of haphazard laws that have been in existence or not in existence for such a long time.
Thank you. Mayor Lee.
So the first thing the federal government needs to do is to end qualified immunity nationally, so that police officers who do commit a crime in some way, who injure someone, who or kill someone, will be fired and not recertified. Also, we need to set national standards, yes, for policing, but not just for policing, for public safety. We're moving forward here in Culver City with the Mobile Crisis Response Unit, which is unarmed. It does not include police officers, and then it's deployed in the cases of mental crisis based on the CAHOOTS model out of Eugene, Oregon. We need to set a national number that's different from 911 so that we can deploy people in the case of emergency. Broadly though, we need to recognize that crime is a result of poverty. And we need more robust federal programs to provide housing as a human right, to provide healthcare as a human right, to make sure that no one in this country goes to sleep hungry.
Thank you. Mr. Fedeliza?
Well, I think as far as law and order is concerned, I think it's the state's issue, but I think it's the federal government's job to make sure that it's fair and firm, and again, be proactive, to encourage the states to be proactive about the criminal elements that are there. I think that yes, we need to help the mentally ill. We need to house the homeless, but we need to quantify exactly how we're going to do that with the existing budget. We just can't throw money at the problem, because we've been throwing money at the problem and nothing's been happening. It's just everyone else gets rich off the backs of these poor people. Again, I was homeless, 48 months, sober homeless, as a project manager and Six Sigma black belt. So I understand their issues, and law enforcement rarely has anything to do with it. You know, it's when they go to the Department of Social Services, it's when they go to Harbor UCLA, when they go to Brotman Hospital over there on Venice Boulevard. You know, if you have an issue, come to the hospital. They don't, or proactively have the hospital outreach to them.
Thank you, Mr. Fedelizo. Back to Vanessa.
Thank you. Now I have a question about drug legalization. Do you support drug legalization, particularly marijuana, and the expunging of prior convictions for drug possession or distribution? And we will go in the same order. So can we please start with Ms. Perry?
Yes. Did you want more?
No, short and sweet is amazing. Yes, thank you.
I mean, you know, we were already had accepted the use of medical marijuana. Now we have recreational marijuana. My only concern is the way that dispensaries are administered in municipalities in terms of, you know, hours of sale, access and egress, security on site, and air quality issues. You know, and how that impacts a neighborhood.
Excellent, thank you. Next, Mr. Scher.
Yes, I support legalization of marijuana. I support expunging police records, especially when you look at the hideously biased racial incarceration rate on minor marijuana convictions. It should happen immediately, and it should happen, and it will happen as soon as the Democrats control Congress, and as soon as I'm in Congress, I'm going to push it every day.
Next, Mayor Lee.
Yes, I support marijuana legalization nationally. It's been de facto legal in many states for quite some time. So if it's legal in one state, it's fairly easy to take it to another, even though it's technically illegal. But one of the other reasons that we should legalize it nationally is that marijuana is potentially a very great drug therapeutically to treat a number of different conditions. And while it's legal medically here and legal medically there and illegal in other places, it being illegal federally and still being a Schedule I drug, which is ludicrous, makes it hard for universities looking to provide better treatment for people who suffer from chronic pain like myself, or who suffer from cancer or other complex diseases, to actually find some type of relief. I also support safe injection sites, and I would love for the federal government to look into the Portland situation, the Portugal situation, and how decriminalizing drugs has worked there.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Thank you, Mayor Lee. Next up, Mr. Fidelizzo.
Yeah, I used to own a dispensary in San Bernardino, so I understand the issues of the medical marijuana. I would take it off the Schedule I for medical research, but I am against under 18 using it unless it's medically unless a medical doctor, an MD, states that they need it, then that's fine. But I just don't want it to be abused, because I see it as a gateway drug. If I have a youngster coming to my dispensary at 10 a.m. saying he's waking and baking and he needs weed to wake up, I think there's an issue with that, because generations from now, if you tell him snow is black, he'll believe you. So I would take it off the Schedule I, and mainly for medical research nationally.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Fidelizzo. And now we're going to move on to the response section. So this is basically an opportunity for you to clarify any of your statements further, or respond to anything any of the members or participants of this forum, or even in this election, have said outside or within this forum. So Ava, would you like to say the order? You'll have 2 minutes for each section.
Yeah. You'll have 2 minutes each. First will be Mayor Lee, second, Mr. Fidelizzo, third, Ms. Perry, then last, Mr. Schur. All right, Mayor Lee, do you want to start us off?
Sure. I'm usually not as big a fan of gossip, but I'll do my best. The only thing that I wanted to respond to in the context of this forum is just a comment by Mr. Fidelizzo that the method in which the leak was leaked was more important than the content. I fundamentally do not believe that. I believe that the content itself is a full force assault on women's rights and human rights in general. And I believe that we have whistleblower protections in many parts of our federal, state, and local laws for that reason. Obviously, things are not going to change with the ruling substantively at the federal level because of the stratification in the Supreme Court. But I think this goes really far towards crashing the illusion that the Supreme Court is or ever was objective. It never has been. When it started, it was populated by railroad businessmen, and they ruled in favor of the railroads and business. If you track the history of the Supreme Court, you'll find something similar depending on who's in power in our country at the time. What we need to do in response is to really take Supreme Court reform seriously, to look at term limits, to look at impeachment, and to look at expanding the court. Secondarily, there's something else that I would mention, but Senator Kamlager's not here. I'm not going to do that while she's not here. Maybe at another forum. Thank you.
All right, next we have Mr. Fedelizo.
Yes. As far as Mayor Lee's comment is, my thing is let the justices be justices, but the process, the integrity of the process has to be maintained, because it may be something that a case that someone else may have, and they're going to say, well, it got leaked out. Now we got problems like we'd had in the OJ trial, you know? So, but I stand on all the, I just want to get it done. I passed this prologue. What I want to do is lower the prices of energy, get rid of the homeless, find them a home, take care of them, and the supply chain. Again, no one cares what's going on if their stomach's empty. No one cares what's going on if they have to choose between rent and fuel, car payment, or a home. No one's going to care about those issues. And having been homeless myself, I know how it's a slippery slope. Once you start getting momentum, it takes off. And if you don't have the skill sets that I have, people, whole families will be destroyed, especially in District 37. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Next, we have Ms. Perry.
So I think my perspective as a congressperson is to fix our democracy, and that's the greatest possible use of that position. And under that falls making sure that we get people housed safely, protecting their constitutional rights, because by leaving them behind in a manner that is more befitting of a third world country, we are denying them their rights to housing, to health care, to education, to emotional well-being. And then we have to protect voting rights, not only in our district, in our city and state, but across the country, because if one state falls, we will all eventually fall. I think I really want to examine and get the benefits of people with experience, both pro and con, about expanding the Supreme Court and also ending the filibuster. I think undergirding all of that is, for me, what's most important is to make sure that we ensure that you inherit a democracy that is sustainable, that is whole, that is accessible to all, and a much more inclusive country with less gridlock. And even in spite of that, there are still ways to work around that. But to create this strong and clearly defined future for you that you can carry forward when our time is done.
Thank you. Last, we have Mr. Schur.
Yeah, again, I would love to have asked something, and I will not talk about it because she is not here, and hopefully we'll have another chance to speak to Senator Kamlager. But I do want to talk about what Mr. Fedelizo has said, not just saying that he voted for Trump last time, which I think, to me, after what we saw for 4 years, is the hardest thing to explain. But taking your eye off the ball, which is what Republicans have tried to have us do for so long right now, and talking about process. I know Mayor Lee brought this up, but it's true. This is a Republican tactic that Democrats, as our democracy is encroached upon, cannot fall for anymore. This had nothing to do with process. The leaker was brave. The journalists, who I always think are brave, were brave. And the point is, the crux of this is that the Supreme Court is poised to take away a Supreme Court ruling, to walk all over stare decisis in that case. It's not about the process. Yes, of course, yeah, leaks, are they great? Sometimes they help, sometimes they don't. But this isn't about the leak. And I think we have to stop falling for those tactics. And I think we can't in the 37th district, and I don't think we will elect someone who does.
Well, I just want to footnote that by saying they make their decision the way they make their decision. I'm worried about the process. I don't want them to be influenced by anybody.
Section. Sorry. Thank you. We have to move on to the next section, which is actually going to be closing statements. So now everybody will have an opportunity to make closing statements. Again, in a randomized order. You'll have 2 minutes to do so. First, we will have Michael Schur, then Baltasar Fedelizo, then Mayor Dr. Daniel Lee, and then Terry. So, Mr. Sure, if you would like to go, you'll have 2 minutes, 2 minutes to make any final statements you would like to leave our audience with tonight.
God, you don't want to hear me talk for 10 minutes about all the things I want to talk about. I do want to say thank you to all of you, my colleagues in this race, each and every one of them, and everyone here who has been at KidScoop doing this. This was great, and it was great for this race, I think, as well. Something happened on Monday or Tuesday of this week when we learned about Roe. Everything kind of changed because we were living in this suspended belief that everything was going to be all right. And then this leak came out. And the way I look at it, that was the moment where we realized, you know what? Everything's not going to be all right unless we do something about it. And the perspective I've had as a journalist, being out there, and I'm being a little redundant now with something I said at the top, but being proximate to these problems and seeing what's going on around the country, I think gives me a leg up on my competitors in this race. I have the experience having walked the halls of Congress and been close to the people that are making the decisions and the people who are standing in the way of the progress. And so being able to work with them, being able to see what is out there. And I'm not just talking about Roe. I'm not just talking about the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. I'm talking about conservatives around the country who are changing our textbooks, who are telling us how and when to refer to gay people in this country. I think that what they're trying to do is create a dumber next generation that they can fool when they get older and they can bring into their fold later on. I am in this race honestly, and as hokey as it sounds, and I tell this to people all over this district, as hokey as it sounds, I'm here to try and protect our democracy. Our democracy is under attack, and it's time to get rid of the chaos that we are living in. And it's certainly a big ask. I'm going to be one of 435 people when I get there, but I know that I'm going to try and do it all the time, and I'm going to take all the priorities that have been in my work and put them to work for you. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Mr. Fedeliza?
Yes, I'm a talent stacker. I've done many things. You can go to my website, baldazarforcongress.com or baldazarbiz.com, and they'll see my curriculum vitae. I want to go after the low-hanging fruit first. Number one, supply chain. I don't want anybody going hungry in my district. I don't want anybody being inconvenienced in my district. As far as energy is concerned, I want the fuel prices down. And what do we need to get down? We're gonna cut deals with whoever we got to cut deals with to get them down. Homelessness. I was homeless. I've been to that 405 and Culver Boulevard in Mayor Lee's district. I was there. I was at the Union Rescue Museum. I was at Chrysalis. I was at PATH. If I wasn't a project manager, I couldn't have got out of it. If I was in the Six Sigma Black Belt, I couldn't have got out of it. I want to resolve the lowest hanging fruits first. And moreover than that, Roe v. Wade, I understand, but I'm worried about someone pulling a nuclear bomb because no one's escaping that. My father worked in Kwajalein in 1980 where they were bombing the islands in the Kwajalein, Marshall Islands over there, and they're cementing it over because it was all radioactive. I don't want that to happen here. Okay, so I'm going after the lowest hanging fruit first, and I want to push for peace.
Good, thank you, Mr. Fedelizo. Next up, we have, sorry. Oh no.
I think it's me.
It's reloaded. Yes, it is. It is you, Mayor Lee. Thank you.
Yeah, so once again, thanks for having me here tonight. As I said, when I began, my real focus in this campaign and part of the reason that I'm in politics at all is really the climate crisis and the fact that we aren't doing enough to address it. It is an existential event. And a lot of people will say things like, well, not all humans will be killed. Some of us will be around. That's true. The conditions will be much worse. We've already had the worst fire in California history, 3 out of the last 4 years. We've had, a 1,000-year drought, I think 3 out of the last 6 years. There are 100-year floods on a regular basis across the United States on floodplains that haven't seen floods of that magnitude in 50 or 60 years. We're in a crisis. Where I grew up on the Gulf Coast, hurricanes are larger, they're more intense, and the rains are more substantive. All of this disaster theater will get in the way of us doing the things that we should do. Make housing a human right, make healthcare a human right, make sure that income inequality, which right now is at Gilded Age levels, goes back to something more equitable, more even, more similar to equality, more similar to the mythology that we teach our kids in middle school and high school, the mythology that many of our students have really been pointedly saying doesn't conform with reality. I'm in this race to really represent you, myself, my family, and everyone who I think is really, really united in the idea that life should not be enjoyable just for those who are affluent enough or lucky enough to be born in one place or another. It should be good for all of us, and we have the funds to do it.
Excellent. Thank you, Dr. Lee. And lastly, Ms. Perry.
Hey, thank you, everybody. And thank you, Michelle, and to KidScoop. I'm really always impressed when I get a chance to talk to you, because you're really fulfilling that important role in building our democracy for the future, and possibly as members of the Fourth Estate. So I want to go to Congress to make sure that you have opportunities now and in the future, opportunities for a very good education, quality healthcare, that as young women, younger women have agency over their own bodies, that our right to vote is protected and it is easier for us to vote. Mail-in voting has made it easier for our county to vote. I never thought things were okay. I've been angry and frustrated and nervous since 2013. 2 weeks before January the 6th, my sister lives in Northern Virginia, and she said to me, you know, there's a lot of people up here with license plates from West Virginia and from Kentucky, and they're registering and taking over all the motels and hotels out here in the suburbs. And she said, I have a bad feeling something's going to happen. You know, we knew that because we grew up with people like that in the Midwest, you know, people who had very extreme beliefs and were willing to act upon them. So none of that was a surprise given where we were at this point in the country. We're on the brink of a potential major conflict. I believe that I am a very experienced, very tenacious, dedicated public servant with experience 360 degrees, not only in the nonprofit world, but in the management of workforce and economic development issues, and also as a former elected official. That I have been able to address many of these problems through the work that I've done. We don't have enough time to talk about it tonight, but I want to build a better, I want to build a better city, world, country for all of you. And I'd really like the honor of having your vote. And thank you for having me here tonight.
Excellent. Thank you, Ms. Perry. We'll now pass it over to Michelle for to wrap up this event.
I lost my light, so I really have to apologize. I'm sitting here in the dark. But I am so impressed by the candidates, by my moderators. You guys are so incredible. You never cease to amaze me. You're so inspiring, and I have so much hope for the future. So thank you for a wonderful panel. And to the panelists, to the candidates, I mean, District 37 is going to be in great hands, whoever wins. So thank you for being on our forum. And if any folks out there want to support KidScoop Media, just go to our website, kidscoopmedia.org, so that we can keep these incredible forums happening in the future. We have a lot of races that we want to host. So thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks. It was
Thanks
great.
so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Good night.
That's right.
Nice weekend.
Thank you.
Bye.
Let's turn this off.
Oh, did we lose Vanessa? Okay. Okay. Well, thanks, guys.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us.
Yeah,
Thank you.
it was great. Well, I'll see you guys soon. Take care.
All right. Have a great night.
Thank you.